Hello everyone, intuitive and astrologer Lisa Salvatore here to talk to you about the 2025 overview, the overarching themes and the astrology, how and when we can see specific events play out, and how these energies could potentially affect us both collectively and personally. If you are new to my channel, welcome. It is lovely to have you here. Happy 2025. Warm wishes for everyone. I've gone ahead and already posted my January 2025 update. That will be linked in the description box below, so you can always go back and listen to that. But in this video, we are going to go through the 2025 overview and the themes. If you appreciate this content and would like more detailed insights, be sure to head over to my Substack newsletter. The link is in the description box below. This is where I am the most active, and I provide weekly live streams each Sunday to talk about the astrological and predictive energies of the upcoming week. We have some spiritual chit chat, I answer questions, and every month I also go live and I give deeper insights into each sign for the month ahead and other perks. You can head over to my Substack. Again, that's linked in the description box below. I also give you access to the recordings of the weekly live streams and the monthly live streams through the YouTube membership, which you can find by clicking join right here on my channel. Please note that the newsletter subscription gives you live access to these events and you have the opportunity to receive a reading. So that's a little bit more of an exclusive subscription, but I just wanted you to know about my new offerings. Either way, welcome. It is lovely to have you here, and let's just go right ahead into 2025. You know who I am, Lisa Salvatore. As mentioned, you can sign up for my interactive newsletter, Substack, link in the description box. For private readings, events, and courses, both paid and free, you can go right over to my website, lisasalvatore.com, and this is obviously my YouTube channel. For those of you that would like to follow along more or understand your own astrology at a deeper level, whether you're new to it or not, I have a free downloadable guide through the houses of the birth chart, but I also have it here. You can always go back and, screenshot these, but there's also a free download available with information through the houses of the birth chart for those that want to follow along. And then under the courses tab on my website, I have more supportive content for you on your astrological journey, if you wish. Here's a quote that I have coined, and I say it all the time, but it bears worth repeating. In a world of instability, be your own stability. Meaning, we must go inward and control what we can, which is only how we respond and react to everything going on around us. It starts within. Reminder that peace comes from within always and not without. We must look after and protect ours. The year of 2025 is the year of the shed. This is a very strong year of shedding and renewal on various levels, collectively and especially personally. The reason that you continuously hear all astrologers saying that 2025 is a monumental year, a big year, is because it's a benchmark year. We are in a year where a lot of the outer planets are shifting signs. This colors the collective overtone for years to come, and these are markers in history. We've talked a lot about this in the past with Pluto moving into Aquarius. We have a lot of planetary shifts occurring that are going to change the trajectory of our lives and of the world. But it is a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. 2024 went by extremely quickly. And here we are in this benchmark year. There's a whole lot of uncertainty. And while I don't want to say to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, that is what we all need to wrap our heads around, is that we have to be somewhat comfortable in this uncertainty, in these uncertain spaces, and get comfortable being uncomfortable. We must trust our intuition now more than ever. Discernment and situational awareness are key as we move throughout this year. I wanted to reference this quote by philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. The snake that cannot shed its skin perishes. So do the spirits who are prevented from changing their opinions. They cease to be spirit. Strong message here. Everything that you believe is likely going to be dropped upside down, flipped around, questioned left and right, and that's okay. You are allowed to change your opinions. You are allowed to change your belief systems, and you're allowed to just not know. Remember, uncertainty is the name of the game, but discernment and intuition are key. So every step of the way, if something doesn't feel right for you, mind, body, spirit, you must go with that. There is a huge mass spiritual awakening taking place on this planet right now. And if you are stuck in a space of fear and you can't claw your way out of it and get a grasp on what's really happening, you're going to struggle that much more. As hard as it is, you have to really try not to live in fear. You have to try and come to grips with the understanding that tomorrow is not promised to any one of us. I've been doing this for my own self as well. Living in a space of fear and panic does not serve us. It does not serve our overall health and well-being. And health and well-being are a very strong focus of 2025. So again, be very mindful and look after yours as best as you can. We are also in a universal year 9, and a 9 year is going to always bring in endings, closure, transformation, and release. There's the shed aspect, shedding of the skin, shedding of the old, the outdated patterns and conditioning, a very strong humanitarian focus, and Pluto now officially in Aquarius is only going to amplify that community. There's going to be a lot of self-reflection and introspection that's going on, and completion and healing. There are going to be massive endings with the promise of new beginnings. Profound shifts and change are on the table, both personally and collectively. The 9th tarot card is the Hermit. The Hermit is a card of strong spiritual reckoning, strong spiritual awakening. The Hermit walks alone. The Hermit is a solitary figure. But the Hermit is never alone, as the flow of spirit moves within the Hermit, walks with him and through him, although he's not a him. It's not gender specific, but the Hermit walks alone, yes, but the Hermit is never alone, and he or she knows that. They've got the movement of spirit within them. We are spirit, we are soul. The Hermit's path is lit by its own intuition, its own inner compass, its own inner light, illuminating the path ahead. Intuition and discernment. The Hermit's also a very strong card of introspection, going inward, being with oneself to find the answers that we seek. Going within is always going to give those answers more than going without. In Chinese astrology, we're going into the year of the wood snake. The Chinese New Year begins officially on January 29th. We're still in the year of the dragon, but we will move into the year of the wood snake. Again, another symbol for transformation, growth, introspection, shedding, and renewal. A snake sheds its skin and regenerates time and time again. So as we shall do the same, spiritually speaking. The card that I have chosen for 2025 is the High Priestess. This is a card all about the unseen, having faith in the unseen, understanding that we have the answers inside of us, whether we choose to express that or not. This is a card of strong inner wisdom and inner knowledge, strong faith and spirituality, and trust in the unseen, in the natural flow of the universe, of the divine, trusting that the answers will be revealed to you in time. The High Priestess knows all but says very little. She trusts her inner guidance. Side note, for those of you that are interested in learning more about the tarot, I have a free masterclass that goes through the 22 major arcana tarot cards in great detail, and it also links to astrology. So if that's something that you're interested in for empowerment, spiritual awareness, definitely check out my free tarot masterclass. It's right on my website, lisasalvatore.com, under courses. I poured my heart and soul into that course, and I have received very positive feedback. And do not let the word free fool you, because it is a fabulous, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, a fabulous introduction to the major arcana tarot cards. So go and check that out. Let's move into the transits for 2025. So major transits for 2025, we have what we call the changing of the guards. Neptune, Saturn, and Uranus all shed their current signs, and they're growing into new energies as we move forward, rebirth and renewal. This is extremely significant because we're going from water and earth energy, and we're moving into air and fire energy, the elements of air and fire. That is a big difference, a big shift of power and consciousness. And the thing is, yes, this is a lot of deconstruction and a lot of change and very fast forward moving changes at that, and often very disruptive. At the same time as these three planets are shedding their signs, they begin to go into harmony with one another, especially toward the end of the year. And that's a beautiful thing. We have not had that in a while. 2020 through 2024 especially, we've been getting hit with the more harsher aspects and realities of these energies. The water and the earth element are more solitary, solid, and less flowy, but yet more porous at the same time. And we can feel very saturated, very stuck, very hyper emotional. Now, as we shift into the air fire element, everything is going to start to speed up. Neptune is currently in Pisces, Saturn is currently in Pisces, Uranus is currently in Taurus. This year, Neptune moves into Aries, Saturn moves into Aries, and Uranus moves into Gemini. Totally new energies. And these energies very strongly color and cover the collective consciousness, humanity. And of course, they affect us personally as well, as these outer planets move very slowly, a longer span of time for things to evolve. We'll also have a retrograde. Well, right now, as we speak, Mars is very retrograde, getting ready to back into Cancer, Venus, the planet of love and connection and pleasure, it's our values, it's our money. Venus will station retrograde. That's not an every year occurrence. That's about an every other year occurrence. We will have the shift of the nodes. We'll have the North Node enter Pisces and the South Node enter Virgo. And then we'll have Pluto in Aquarius. Well, we do have Pluto in Aquarius, but Pluto's in Aquarius for good now until 2044. And we're going to break this all down. As mentioned, all three inner planets, Mercury, Mars, and Venus, will have their retrogrades. Mercury's going to have 3 this year. I will provide the dates at the end of this. The Aries-Libra eclipse story will complete. We will have our final eclipse in March in Aries, and then we'll be straight on into the Virgo-Pisces story. We'll have Neptune and Saturn and the North Node in Pisces hovering quite closely, especially Neptune and Saturn near that first degree of Aries, which will be exact in July. Uranus will enter Gemini July 7th. Saturn enters Aries on May 25th. This is a 3-year transit. Saturn and Neptune will align in July. We'll have Jupiter entering the sign of Cancer for 1 year in June. That's going to be a nice breath of fresh air. So let's break this all down. I'm going to start with Neptune, as this is by far the most significant change in transit of the year. Neptune will enter Aries on March 30th. This is very significant. Neptune, think of it like this. Neptune is the planet that governs over spirituality. It governs over faith. It is the media. It is also illusion and fantasy. It's toxins, it's pollutants, it's gasoline, oil, it's the ocean, it's water. Neptune, positively speaking, is also unconditional love, higher love, divinity. Neptune has been in the sign of its domicile, the sign that it prefers, in Pisces since 2014. And yes, Neptune functions very well in Pisces, but it's also extremely Piscean, which can sometimes be very detrimental for us because we can tend to gloss over more serious issues while Neptune's in Pisces. Things can feel much more unclear. But on the positive side, there's a very strong spiritual bend to it, to the collective, a much stronger focus on the Piscean areas of life, such as love, divinity, psychic and spiritual awareness. The shadow side is addiction. And there could be a lot of spiritual bypassing with Neptune in Pisces. Well, always with Neptune. Now, Neptune enters Aries. Aries is the very first sign of the zodiac. No matter which system you use, Aries is the beginning, the very beginning. It's an initiation point. It's where we blaze forward and start anew. And collectively speaking, we're doing this. Now, the thing is, Neptune will enter Aries on March 30th, but will also retrograde back into Pisces on October 22nd and will remain there until January 27th of 2026. And then Neptune will officially be in Aries when we get to 2026. But this is still extremely significant because Neptune will spend a couple of months giving us a little bit of a flavor, a little bit of an idea of what can come as we really move into the Neptune and Aries years, which will be 2026 all the way through 2039. When Neptune will officially be in the sign of Aries. Aries is a bold fire sign. It's all about action. It's not a fear-based sign at all. And Neptune, the planet, can sometimes fall into that fear space. So when Neptune changes signs, it does indicate very big shifts in society. You're also going to want to look to the part of your birth chart that contains both Pisces and Aries so that you can see where these energies will affect you personally for the next years. There's a link to a video in the description box below that will show you exactly what I mean when I say check your chart. So in case you want to know more about that, you can check that out. And you can also always pull up your birth chart right on my website, on my homepage, lisasalvatore.com. We can definitely expect with Neptune and Aries, bold new visioning and innovations in spirituality, medicine, the media, and the arts, just to name a few. What we will also see, and are already starting to see, is the disillusionment that the collective has, disillusionment and disenchantment with leadership, with power. We'll also see revolt and revolution, major uprising of the collective, the power of the people, we the people. And also, definitely, there's going to be this breaking apart of countries and cities and setting up, potentially, an entirely new government. And this will be years, by the way, not immediate, but this will be years. There's already talk of Canada joining with the US. I've always seen Texas breaking away. So let's see what happens. But going back in history, the Neptune and Aries transit in the 1800s coincided with the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, just to give context. Neptune was last in Aries back in 1861. Neptune entered Aries, and then the day after, the American Civil War began. I'm not saying that that is going to happen again. I'm just giving you the context of the history here and where we're coming back full circle. I always say history does not repeat itself necessarily, but history will always mimic itself. And we're in a position now, us here as the collective, to shift this, or to try to shift this. Just going back real quick to when Neptune was last in Aries, there was also the dissolution of the monarchy and the church. And a lot of people were really getting away from the typical biblical studies and starting to break off and form different types of organizations. This is also the time where the Jehovah's Witnesses was formed and also the Salvation Army. There was a huge New Age spirituality movement that spread rapidly. Mediumship and seances became very pronounced at this time. And then this very strong, precarious dance between science and spirituality, science versus spirituality. A lot of people were trying to debunk mediumship, spirituality, the church, etc. So we're likely going to see a lot of this again as we come full circle. And we're already seeing it. Personally speaking, Neptune's placement in your birth chart is going to reveal one's connection to creativity. It's the creative energy, their psychic energy, their spirituality, spiritual nature, divinity, faith. This is also the space of the unconscious. This governs over the unconscious. It is the unconditional unconscious love that we hold. This is also where one has the potential to deceive or be deceived. We can wear rose-colored glasses in the areas of life that Neptune governs for us. I'm looking forward to the Neptune and Aries years. We're definitely entering very interesting times, and it will be fascinating to see how this all plays out. There's definitely going to be leaps and bounds made with medicine, medical protocol, drugs, alcohol. It's interesting because I've been noticing that a lot of people are choosing total sobriety right now. When Neptune is in Pisces, okay, Pisces on the shadow end can fall prey to addiction, addictive tendencies, addictive behaviors, whether that's addiction to exercise, addiction to a specific narcotic, addiction to alcohol. Those are toxins, right? And Neptune does rule over toxins and poison as well. It's interesting that a lot more people are choosing sobriety right now, and no judgment if you're not, but the Neptune in Pisces era was definitely, I should say, more of a time where alcohol was much more, I don't want to say it's not acceptable, but it was much more accepted and you would hear about it much more. At least I think so. It seems like more people are moving into becoming their leader in their own life, taking control, taking ownership, right on target with Neptune entering Pisces. This is like saying you have to save yourself because no one is going to save you. Because that is something else with Neptune on the shadow side that we can fall into, is this illusion that there's some savior out there, whether that's the government is our savior, our leaders are our savior, whomever else is our savior. No, the message with Neptune, especially Neptune and Aries, is you are responsible for yourself. You and only you have the ability to save yourself. You have more control than you realize. Strong message of Neptune in Aries. So definitely look to the part of your chart that contains Aries, because you're going to be looking at the ways in which you might have been deceiving yourself about where you have not taken control of your reality, or where you might need to, or where you may need to stand up and have more courage and strength to move forward, etc. There's a lot more I can say, but I'm going to try not to stay on one specific thing for too long. That's why I have these slides here, to keep me on track. Then Saturn will enter Aries, and Saturn enters Aries on May 25th. Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023, okay? Now Saturn is in the last sign of the zodiac as we speak, wrapping up a 29-year cycle, as Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. Now Saturn moves into Aries, the very first sign of the zodiac, which, by the way, Saturn does not favor Aries. Saturn in Aries is considered to be in its fall. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means, think of it this way. Aries is the trailblazer, the go-getter, the fire sign that wants to plow through and just get everything done. And Saturn is the brakes. Saturn's like, no, hold on. Saturn puts the wall up. Saturn says, have you looked at all angles? Is this the right thing? Have you made a plan? Is this on schedule? So where Saturn wants us to stop and just reassess, okay? Aries just wants to move. Aries wants to go. And so this could sometimes cause problems. It could be problematic, which again doesn't mean bad. It could just be a little bit more frustrating. You're taking the planet of boundaries and a sign that's like, hey, I really don't care what you think or say because I'm going to do what I got to do. I have to get there and I'm going. You put those two together and, well, there's friction. Saturn in Pisces is a little different because Saturn is very structured and can use a little bit of softening, and Pisces can use a little bit of structure. So Saturn in Pisces it might have been more illusory, but not as intense or frustrating as Saturn in Aries will be. Saturn and Neptune will align in July, and we are really being called into action, both in our personal lives and collectively speaking. This transit, the Neptune in Aries and the Saturn in Aries, is all about developing our collective and personal courage, our collective and personal strength, the ability to know where we can take action and where we need to wait. This is about balancing impulsivity with discipline. It's great to have the bold vision, but you might just have to wait to act on it. Patience is key. Few things I want to show you. This is from my software. You can see here that on May 25th, Saturn right here will enter Aries at 0 degrees. The North Node will be at 24 Pisces. The North Node is the collective destiny, what we're moving toward. So it's not that close, but it's close enough. And then we have Neptune here at 1. So we've got Saturn and Neptune right off the gate as Saturn enters Aries. It's very close to Neptune here at 1 degree. On July 5th, Neptune stations retrograde at 2 degrees of Aries. You can see that right here. And Saturn's here hanging out at 1 degree of Aries. Then Saturn will station retrograde on July 13th at 1 degree of Aries. And now these two are going to be co-joined. They're going to be together all the way through August 16th. So from July 31st all the way through August 16th, Saturn and Neptune will be conjunct. They'll be aligned. They'll be together, holding hands at 1 degree of Aries. So you're going to want to really be paying attention to what is going on, both in your personal life and collectively speaking, at this time. Basically all of July and August, with more of a stronger emphasis on July 31st through August 16th, when Saturn and Neptune will both be at that 1st degree of Aries. They're going to do this again in 2026, but this is going to be a glimmer. Speaking of glimmer, and speaking of water, because Neptune is water, Saturn is structure, the last time that Saturn and Neptune aligned like this was back in 1989 through 1990, but it was in the sign of Capricorn. So same aspect, different sign. And just for context, back in 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. The wall is Saturn, the structure. The dissolution of that structure, Neptune. Also in 1989, we had the rise of the AIDS epidemic, which then proceeded in more medical intervention, Neptune. And if you know your history, you know there's a lot of other things that occurred through these years as well. Something I threw in here that I found very interesting. Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, has Saturn, Neptune at birth, right here. You can see it. It's not exact, but it's within a couple of degrees. That's a conjunction. He's got Saturn and Neptune in Aries by conjunction in his birth chart. And if we move it over to Vedic astrology, he does still have this conjunction, but it's in Virgo, which makes it even stronger because the South Node is entering Virgo, which is a point of release, okay? Follow me. Look at this. I apologize. I don't want to mispronounce his name. Yingping, I believe. I think I'm saying it correctly. He also, the leader of China, he also has a Saturn-Neptune conjunction here in Libra, only 1 degree away, very tight. And in Vedic astrology, he also has this conjunction in Virgo, same as Putin. I find that very fascinating. I found that really interesting. I have been feeling, before I even looked at these charts, that there was something that was going to be happening with Russia and China, obviously, with the US, though, where there was going to be a potential fall in leadership with these two, because think about it, Saturn and Neptune, that could be associated with the dissolution of the power of these individuals. The stripping away of the power of these individuals could be. Do they become allies? We'll see. But it's going to be really interesting to say the least, especially as we get into the later part of 2025 and moving into 2026. And that's definitely not a coincidence of when I was guided to look at these charts. So I will come back with these. Here's another biggie. Uranus, the planet of revolution, disruption, change, individualism. Uranus is going to enter Gemini on July 7th. Uranus will spend 7 years in Gemini, but it will return to Taurus on September 1st. It will retrograde back into Taurus, where it will remain until January 30th of 2025. So we're going to get like a little over 2 months, kind of like maybe a teaser or a taste with Uranus in Gemini and Neptune in Aries and Saturn in Aries of what could come, of potential changes, what's being rocked out, what's taking place at this time. Uranus will then be in Gemini indefinitely until 2033, and we're also going to experience the Uranus return for the United States of America. This is huge. Let me show you. The inner ring is the birth chart for the United States of America. This is the Sibley chart when the Declaration of Independence was said to be signed on July 4th, 1776. This is the one that most astrologers will use. And you can see in the Sibley chart that Uranus is right here at 8 degrees of Gemini. The outer ring is the transits, what the planets are doing, and how they align with this chart. On July 7th, you see Uranus here by transit at 0 degrees of Gemini. So we are entering the point of the Uranus return for the United States of America. It's still 8 degrees away and we're going to have a retrograde. So it might not be that strong yet, but it's here, it's in effect. Just moving this to July 7th of 2027, that will be when Uranus is at the exact position in the sky as it was, where it was in the sky in 1776. You can see it right here, Uranus at 8 degrees, Uranus at 8 degrees. We also have Pluto in Aquarius exactly on the south node for the USA. Release, release, shed, shed. Second house, that's our house of money. That's our values. Now let's talk about the eclipses. Eclipses occur near the nodes of the moon. The nodes of the moon are not visible points in the sky. They're not planets, they're calculations, but they're very, very significant. Think of the lunar nodes as the destiny nodes, the points of fate. The ancients looked at eclipses as an ominous event because they are a time where the light literally goes out for some moments in time. And when the lights were to come back on, things would be different. The north node will enter Pisces and the south node will enter Virgo, the two opposite signs, on January 11th. The north node has been in Aries and the south node has been in Libra since 2022. So this is a palpable shift. Personally speaking, you're going to want to look to your birth chart, to the part of your birth chart that contains Aries and Libra, because that is where this final eclipse that we're going to have in March will wrap up the story of the Aries Libra for you, or at least a portion of it for now. And then the Pisces and Virgo part of your birth chart of your life will be activated by the next series of eclipses until 2027. In Vedic astrology, the north node is the hungry head of the dragon, known as Rahu, and the tail is the south node. This is where we let go, known as Ketu. The north node is always going to bring us to what is best for our growth, but not the most comfortable because it's not what's natural to us. The south node is what we are said to be carrying with us from the last lifetime. I practice evolutionary astrology mostly, and I can tell you that the south node is an indicator of the last lifetime and the contract that you set up for yourself when you came back into this lifetime, when you reincarnated. So think of it like, I always say this to my clients, think of it like you pack your psychic suitcase before you come back and you make this contract, which is your birth chart, is your soul contract, the GPS of your soul. And you say, however that worked for you, but the south node is like your spiritual Achilles heel. These are traits of that sign of your south node that are going to be easier for you to lean back on or to fall back on, or sometimes just stay in a space of comfort. And like I always say, what grows in comfort zones? Complacency. We get comfortable there, but long enough on your journey, as you get far along enough on your journey, I should say, you'll always feel a slight increasing discomfort when it comes to the south node because your soul knows that you're supposed to be reaching toward the north node. And the universe, the divine, will continue to provide you with experiences and situations that will prove challenging as you try to navigate just that, the balance, the delicate balance between your nodal axis, the north node and the south node in your birth chart. Not to confuse you more, but we all have a north node and a south node in our birth chart, and they're going to be exactly opposite of each other, personally speaking. Collectively speaking, the north node's entering Pisces and the south node is entering Virgo. So if you have the north node in Pisces in your birth chart and the south node in Virgo, you're going to be going into what we call the nodal return years. If you've got the north node in Virgo and the south node in Pisces, you're going into what we call the nodal opposition years. Both will have destined events, people coming in and out of your life, endings and beginnings. It might not be dramatic. For some, it could be dramatic. It also depends on where this impacts your birth chart. So it gets much more intricate. It's much more involved. But overall, check the part of your birth chart that contains Pisces and Virgo and reflect back to the part that contains Aries and Libra. Look at the houses that were impacted, the areas of life. See how things have played out for you. If you're new to astrology, it'll probably blow your mind. And even if you're seasoned, eclipses are always times where we look back and we recognize what has gone on and how it has shaped our future, our reality. And this is why they're the nodes of fate. Collectively speaking, with the North Node in Pisces, we're going to be reaching, on the positive side, much more toward compassion, empathy, altruism, spirituality, divinity, recognition more of the consciousness that runs, the spirit that runs through all of us. Now, the shadow side. Pisces can live in a space of total denial and or illusions to protect oneself, to swim away from conflict when they don't want to know, to bury their head in the sand and not deal with it. Also to lend toward addictive tendencies and behaviors in order to numb out and or check out. That's the shadow side. North Node in Pisces, we're also going to see tremendous growth when it comes to the film industry, the media, social media, TV, artistry, color, the way we can view it. That can be very positive. But collectively, we're being asked to embrace the goodness of the spirit, the trust and the faith in a higher power, whatever that is for you, knowing that there is something outside of our small selves here, small physical selves, because we are all spirit. And it's more about how we connect to that, our own spiritual nature, our own spiritual center and well-being. We'll likely collectively be much more focused on all of this. And we're being energetically pushed into that direction. The South Node in Virgo is asking us to release the need to always feel that we have to be perfect and that everything is perfect or everything is great, because perfectionism is an impossibility. The South Node in Virgo asks us to let go of the notion that everything has to be perfect before we can move ahead. Sometimes you don't have the answers, and that's okay. We're also being called to let go of the need to always be right. Analysis paralysis can occur wherever we have Virgo, so we have to watch out for that. It's asking us to let go of the need to be overly critical of both oneself and of others, to nitpick, try not to nitpick as much. These are all habits that we want to decrease. That's the South Node. It's a point of decrease. This axis, Pisces Virgo, is all about health, healing, spirituality, and service. Those that have their nodes at birth in Pisces and Virgo, I find a lot of them are actually in service roles. A lot of them are in healing professions. These are two very intuitive signs. It's about the balance of the mind, the body, and the spirit. That's what we're looking for with these nodes. We have to find the balance. Where Virgo is the logic, Pisces is the intuition. We have to blend the two. We have to trust the two. And we have to be understanding of the fact that a lot of times, especially over the next couple of years, our intuition should and will rule over logic, and we have to trust that. Remember what I said at the beginning, discernment and intuition are key. I have a Pisces moon, and I will tell you, I have always followed that little voice, that intuition. And the only time it's failed me is when I haven't listened. And that was way long ago back on my journey, when I didn't recognize, when I wasn't as conscious of the intuitive energy that I was holding. We are all right now collectively being called to honor that. We also must keep our feet on the ground, which is what the earth sign of Virgo asks us to do. We can't completely throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Flights of fancy, fantasy, delusion, because that's the shadow side of Pisces. There's a shadow side to everything. But the themes, while these nodes are in Pisces and Virgo, the North Node is moving more toward the Pisces sides of life. And the South Node in Virgo is asking us to do away with some of those patterns and behaviors that are outdated and are no longer working for us. We will definitely see this playing out a lot in the health and healing industries, with hospitals, with medical personnel, the psychic space, spiritual space. If you wish, and if you can, reflect back to June 23rd of 2026, around there, through December 18th of 2007, around there, roughly. It doesn't have to be the exact dates, but in that time frame, because that is when the North Node was last in Pisces and the South Node was last in Virgo. And then also you can reflect back, which would be even closer, to November of 2015 through May of 2017, because at that time, the North Node was in Virgo and the South Node was in Pisces, so opposite. So you can definitely check back to those points in your life and just check in and see if you can recall if anything comes up about what was going on in your reality. Because you may see some theming, some repetitive theming here. Doesn't mean it'll be exactly the same, but there may be reverberations that make sense to you. The first eclipse that we will have falls on March 14th, and that one is a total lunar eclipse, a full moon in Virgo. And as we get closer to these, I'll do full readings for them. So I'm just going to touch on them for now. And then we're going to have the partial solar eclipse in Aries on March 29th. And now that will be the final eclipse of the Aries Libra cycle. So pay close attention to what comes in, what's surrounding you early March and as we move throughout the month, and where you feel like there's some finality or you have some closure, whether it's large or small. Pay attention to that and then reflect back to the Aries Libra parts of your birth chart. On September 7th, we're going to have a total lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. I really have my eye on this one, especially when it comes to water. So we're going to talk more about that as we move along. And then we'll have a partial solar eclipse in Virgo on September 21st. A solar eclipse is when the sun and the moon and the earth align in such a way that the moon essentially covers the sun. For a partial solar eclipse, it only partially covers the sun. A total solar eclipse, it'll totally cover the sun. A lunar eclipse, the full moon, on the other hand, is when the moon moves into the Earth's shadow and the moon becomes completely darkened and we do not see the light of the moon. There is no illumination, it's eclipse. And that also can be partial or total. Think about with eclipses. The lights go off, dark, something is eclipsed, and the lights come on and something is revealed. That is why a lot of times with eclipses, there are very fast and quick endings and then new beginnings. And they can go either way. Eclipses just are. It is our job not to fear them, not to live in fear of what could be, but to actually live in awe and wonderment of what could be. Always thinking about the highest, most possible manifestation of these energies for you, as opposed to any potential doom and gloom you think could come with it. It's always a mixed bag. Because just as you think it could be extremely negative and you could be fearing it, it could also be the most beautifully and rewarding positive experience for you that comes after great change. Remember that. We will have 3 Mercury retrograde periods this year, as we always do. Last year, in 2024, all of our retrogrades occurred through fire signs. So they were quite disruptive. In the fire signs, it's sometimes a little too fast and furious, which could be good at times, but also it could be, again, too hot, too fast, too abrasive. But the information still gets out. This year, we're going to have the retrogrades beginning in fire signs and moving back into water signs. These are likely going to be pretty messy, as we know that water puts out fire. So period 1, and you can always screenshot these or come back to these later. Mercury enters its pre-shadow phase on March 1st at 2:49 a.m. Eastern Time at 26 degrees of Pisces. Just to explain the pre-shadow phase, this is when Mercury gets to the degree, Mercury's still traveling direct at this point. This is where Mercury will get to the degree that Mercury will later station direct at, okay? So Mercury will enter its pre-shadow at 26 degrees and 49 minutes of Pisces and will officially station retrograde on March 15th at 9 degrees and 35 minutes of Aries. But you can start to feel the buildup of the incoming retrograde when we get to early March. Mercury will also be entering its pre-retrograde shadow phase on the same day that Venus will station retrograde, and we'll talk about that. So that could just be a little bit messy, especially for relationships and communication in relationships. I have March pegged as a hot button month, by the way. So just like I'm saying January, head on a swivel, use your discernment all year long, but in March, very strong as well. Pay closer attention to your finances. You might want to start doing that as early as now. Make sure that everything of yours is in order, just in case, because we're likely going to see a lot of financial disturbances worldwide when we get to the month of March. Now, on March 24th, we have what we call the Mercury Cosmetic, which is the inferior conjunction of Mercury and the Sun, and that will happen at 4 degrees of Aries. That's always a bright spot in the retrograde, typically, or at least it's a point where something feels more clear to us. We gain a little bit of clarity, or we can, I should say. And then Mercury will station direct on April 7th at 26 degrees and 49 minutes of Pisces. So it starts in Pisces, moves through Aries, goes back into Pisces, and ends in Pisces. Fire, water. Second retrograde, shadow period starts on June 30th at 4 degrees of Leo. Officially stations retrograde on July 18th at 15 degrees of Leo. We'll have that Mercury Cosmetic on July 31st at 9 degrees of Leo. Mercury will then station direct on August 11th at 4 degrees of Leo, and it leaves its post-shadow phase, which means it goes back to where it was when it first stationed retrograde. I know it sounds confusing. And that'll be August 25th at 15 degrees of Leo. Then we're officially out of the Mercury retrograde woods at this point. And then the third period, also October, another messy month. Mercury enters its pre-shadow phase on the 21st of October at 20 degrees of Scorpio, stations retrograde on November 9th at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, Mercury Cosmetic on November 20th at 28 degrees of Scorpio, stations direct on November 30th at 20 degrees of Scorpio, and then leaves the post-shadow phase on December 16th at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. As we get closer, you'll want to check your chart and just see if you have anything that falls around these degrees and signs, because that will be felt with this retrograde, or it could be felt more with this retrograde. So you just know sort of like where it could potentially impact you. Let's talk about Venus retrograde for a moment. We do not have a Venus retrograde every year. Venus retrogrades typically every other year, every 18 months or so. Venus will station retrograde on March 1st and will be retrograde through April 12th. If you wish, you can reflect back and try to connect the last Venus through Aries retrograde cycles to see how this one could theme similarly, or also just to track your progress and see how far you've come. That's a much more constructive use of looking back. You'd want to look back to March and April of 2009, and then also March and April of 2017. Venus retrograde will go through the same sign every 8 years or so. Venus rules over our values, our core values. It's our personal beliefs, our personal values, the way that we feel about ourselves, our self-esteem. It's also our money and the way that we connect to our money and to ourself. It's our emotional, spiritual, physical, material values. It's also about relationships, the way that we love, the way that we connect, and what we do to seek pleasure, what we like, what we enjoy, what we find pleasing, all governed by our Venus. So with Venus retrograde through Aries, you're going to want to look to the part of your chart that contains Aries because you will be reevaluating all of the Venus themes here. It's very common to hear astrologers say not to start a new relationship during Venus retrograde or not to have cosmetic surgery during Venus retrograde. I'm going to say this. I do agree with the surgery, cosmetic surgery, if it's elective. Reason being, it doesn't mean that anything bad will happen. It just means that there's much more of a chance that you're not going to like the results or that something won't go according to plan or your plan. It won't go according to your plan. So I always say if you can hold off, you should. But obviously there are times in life where we have to do certain things. And the same goes for relationships. Nobody can tell you what to do. Venus retrograde is also about karma, karmic contracts, karmic endings and beginnings. So to tell someone not to start a relationship during Venus retrograde is essentially attaching themselves to your karma. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you what to do. If you're a personal client, I'm going to tell you what I feel, see, and think is right for you based upon what I'm perceiving through your birth chart and through my intuition. Of course, I'm going to be honest and tell you that. But collectively speaking, I'm not going to say a blanket statement like don't start a new relationship under Venus retrograde because I just don't agree with that. It's a lot more layered. What do you do with that? You trust your intuition, you trust your discernment, and you have to trust yourself. I always use this example. If something comes into your life, you weren't looking for it, you didn't ask for it, it appears, it comes in. That is the universe's way of giving you something. It's saying, here, this might be a gift, it might not be, but that's for you to decide. It's for you to discern. It's for you to determine. And then what you do with that, that's your free will. Fate brought that to you. You didn't seek it out. In those instances, I always say it's worth exploring because you weren't looking for it. So it's there for a reason, right? Whether it's a good reason or a learning curve or a growth spurt, whatever it is, a challenge, it's there for a specific purpose. Now, if you're the one initiating and instigating and calling and trying to rekindle a relationship or start a relationship, it might not bode well for you. That is true. But that's with anything and everything in life. I always say that. That's how you know when the universe, the divine, and spirit is working behind and through you to give you something. It's not as complicated as we think. Okay, enough of my tangent. Here are the Venus retrograde dates. Venus enters its pre-shadow phase on January 28th, 24 degrees of Pisces. Now, Venus, remember, Venus loves to be in the sign of Pisces. She does very well here, okay? So this is a nice placement for Venus, but she is entering the pre-retrograde shadow phase at this point. Then she will station retrograde on March 1st at 10 degrees of Aries. Mercury is in its shadow period at this point, getting ready for the first retrograde of the year, just so you know, just as a reminder. Venus will station on March 1st at 10 degrees of Aries. Then we will have the Venus cazimi, which is lovely, beautiful. I'll go into this more as we get closer. This is a nice spot in the month of March, even though there's going to be a lot of other chaotic things going on around it. We'll have the conjunction of Venus and the Sun. Venus has a 40-day retrograde cycle. If you know the Bible, biblical references to the number 40. This is where she morphs from an evening star to a morning star. It's a metamorphosis of Venus, and such it's a metamorphosis of our own Venus, our own love nature, our own divine feminine, which we all have within us, masculine or feminine. We all have both. Then Venus moves back into Pisces on March 27th and will remain there for the remainder of the retrograde and will station direct on April 12th at 24 degrees of Pisces. At this point, you can expect some form of clarity, aha moments to occur with both your finances and your relationships and potentially your relationship to your finances. During this time, the headlines and the storylines are going to likely be focused on the feminine parts of life, feminine rights, feminine movement. One thing that I forgot to add to the slides is that on June 9th, Jupiter will enter the sign of Cancer. That is going to be really nice. Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. Jupiter is a social planet. This is where we see what's going on collectively. This is also how it affects us personally. This is also a space that we can see ourselves receiving just a little bit more positivity and or abundance or blessings as Jupiter seeks to gift us. Jupiter is all about benevolence, but more strongly, I want you to think about what is going on in your reality with the current Mars retrograde. As of January 6th, Mars will retrograde back into Cancer. And this is significant because Jupiter will enter Cancer in June. So I want you to think about what's happening throughout this retrograde transit of Mars, especially December through February, and especially with a strong emphasis on January 6th all the way through February 23rd. Take note of what might seem particularly emotionally challenging for you, or maybe even literally challenging for you, where you might be more and more increasingly frustrated, or what you're working through. Take note of it, because when we get to June, Jupiter enters Cancer, and you could receive just like a nice validation or a blessing or information that helps you that pertains to what is happening or feeling more challenging to you now. So you may just want to pay attention to that. But Jupiter in Cancer, that's a 1 year long transit. Jupiter's been in Gemini. Jupiter expands everything, okay? And in Gemini is a very fast moving, mutable air sign. It's very concerned with information. And sometimes with Jupiter here, it's too much information overload. There's so much coming at us. There's so much going on that it could be hard to funnel the information. Jupiter struggles in Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini is what we call to be in its detriment. But in Cancer, Jupiter is in its exaltation. Much cozier, much nicer, much sweeter, much more benevolent. So whatever is going on now that the Mars retrograde could potentially be inflaming for you or heating up, you could see a healing bomb present itself, or more obviously present itself as we get to the Jupiter in Cancer transit, especially as we move throughout the rest of 2025, as Jupiter is officially going to be in Cancer for 1 full year. I like to always give book recommendations. I'm a book nerd. Anything by Pema Chödrön, anything by this author is fabulous, by the way. I have many of her books, but this is one of my favorites, Comfortable with Uncertainty. Particularly for the times that we are living through and we are living under, I find this book to be a godsend. I've read it many times. I'll probably read it again soon. And I always have to plug this book, Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark. This is just very helpful for self-analysis and self-work. You can use this over and over again. It is always helpful and always enlightening. And this book, The Gift of Fear, I heard about this on TikTok, actually. Survival Signals That Protect Us from Violence by Gavin de Becker. I'm halfway through this book. I highly, highly recommend this, The Gift of Fear. This is, remember what we said before, we do not want to live in fear, right? Because if you live in fear, we get stuck, we get paralyzed. This book is very much about not living in fear, but being aware of what could go wrong and what could happen when you don't trust your instincts. The Gift of Fear, situational awareness. This is the theme for 2025. Situational awareness, head on a swivel, having your spiritual practices in place for when you feel like you're spinning out. You have something to lean on. You have something to pull into. You go into your spiritual toolbox, your spiritual suitcase, and you pull out those tools that help to calm you down, that help to bring you back to center, whether that's a walk out in nature, a conversation with a good friend, reading a book, taking a bubble bath, an Epsom salt bath, meditation, whatever that is for you. And if you don't know what works, try to find it now. Try to find what soothes. It's only going to help you. It's going to help you get out of that space of fear and constant worry and anxiety, and it's going to bring you into center, recognizing that, well, we cannot control what goes on out there. We can only control what goes on in here. It's here first. We must come back to this always. All right, that was a lot. I hope that was helpful. I will come back with more as we move throughout these transits. This is, again, just a really quick overview of the themes for 2025. If you appreciate this content and would like deeper insights, go over to my newsletter. Again, I do weekly live streams. I give you the upcoming forecast for the week ahead in more detail. And I also have the YouTube subscription, which gives you the recordings to the live streams. You just can't participate in the live streams. And all of my other info is linked below in the description box. Take really good care. Much love, many blessings, and I will see you all soon. Bye.